Hi, this is Darius at the Retail Tech Podcast. Today we are speaking with Karthik from a company called Coin, which is very interesting in the mobile payment space, which is becoming really big for retailers all over the world, really. And I saw them at the CES show and wanted to get more information from them. So Karthik's been nice enough to get on the Skype with us right now and talk to me. How are you, Karthik, today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you. So just if you could start just giving me some information about what Coin is and how it actually works would be great.
Sure. So Coin is a device that is in the form factor of a credit card. So it looks like a card, it's the same thickness as a card, but it's an electronic device. So it can hold all of your cards and works at most magstripe terminals. So we started shipping Coin in April of last year after a pre-order campaign. And later in the year, in the summer, we started shipping a product called Coin 2.0. So it's an upgraded version. And the biggest feature that Coin 2.0 has is NFC tap to pay. And this is, really excites me because it's kind of the sort of the evolution of payment in the U.S., right? So for decades we've been using mag stripes, but as we sort of go towards mobile devices paying, NFC is sort of that common framework that all these devices are using to pay.
Okay. So that's really what the part that I think would be really interesting and valuable for retailers. Is because, bottom line is that as a retailer, your number one goal is to make it as easy as possible for your customers to pay you. Yeah. So that's where I wanted to find out how this actually helps smoothen that process for them.
Sure. So, if you look at EMV style transaction, right, there's two ways that an EMV transaction can take place. It can either happen through the embedded contact that's on the card. So when you get all your new credit cards in the mail, they have the chip, you insert it in there. And most chip-style transactions are quite slow. So you put it in there and you wait several seconds and it says, don't pull the card out yet, don't pull the card out yet. And 10 seconds, 20 seconds later, you can finally pull the card out, put it back in your wallet and move on. But there's another way to do an EMV-style transaction, which is over NFC. The communication is the same. The data that's being transferred is essentially the same, but NFC, because it's tap to pay, you can't expect someone to hold their device at the terminal for 10, 20 seconds. So the rules around how an NFC transaction takes place requires a very quick transaction. It's under a second. And this is really important because, for decades, everyone swipes, and your swiping is very fast, right? You pull out the card, you swipe it,
right,
and you move on.
Right.
With a chip, it's kind of different, right? You could put the card in there and you wait. NFC is the most natural way to do it because, again, it's kind of like swiping. You just kind of swipe and you move on. With NFC, you just put the device on the reader, it beeps, you take the device away, and all of the communication with the back end happens after that data transfer has occurred. So from a user perspective, it feels a lot quicker. You're not really interacting with the terminal, you're just kind of waving something over it. And it's a lot more frictionless, right?
But so that's a good point. Does that mean that the authorization process could happen after the shopper has left?
No, because you have to wait for the transaction to authorize and for the receipt to print, and all that still is the same. The only difference is that in the chip card, you put it in there and it's communicating with the server while the card is in there. So that's why it takes so long.
Okay.
But you're still going to wait 10, 15 seconds, but it's psychologically it's a lot quicker.
You don't have to have your card there
exactly
all the time. Okay.
And what that really means is, let's say that you're going for a run, you want to get some water. If you're just tapping and going, it psychologically feels like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to get some water. I'll get a Gatorade. Whereas it's not this big. What's the word? It's not this big event.
I'll have to wait until my Gatorade bottle fills up.
Right.
Fill it
exactly.
up for me.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So, do retailers actually have to do anything to enable, let's say, for example, using NFC and also with Coin 2.0?
So if they already accept NFC payments, then they won't actually have to change any of their systems to accept coin. And one of the things that we found when we were enabling payments with coin device over NFC is that actually there's a lot of parties that are sort of very interested in how this plays out. So you have the banks, you have the networks, and working with all of them to build a system that meets their regulations, meets their rules, is secure enough, and yet is still usable for the customer, is something that a lot of wearable devices want to be able to do. Mm-hmm. So what we actually did recently is we had this announcement with MasterCard to help bring NFC payments to all wearable devices. And one of the big things is, for retailers, you don't want to be in a position where every time a new device comes out, you have to upgrade your terminal. It has to work seamlessly.
Right.
And so what we want to do is build a system that, from a retailer perspective, as long as you support NFC-based payments, you support Apple Pay, you support Android Pay, you don't have to do anything else, right? You have to have that one upgrade. If you just have a magstripe-only terminal, of course, it's not going to work. But you do that upgrade, you accept NFC payments, and suddenly you accept payments from all these wearables.
Wow, that's pretty good. So, I mean, that would be awesome, because believe me, that technology is the last thing retailers want to deal with.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
It doesn't, so in order for them to be NFC enabled, mm-hmm. they need a device that can actually accept NFC, right?
That's correct. And so, most of the terminals that are being shipped today have NFC capability built in. So I think from Verifone, like over 95% of the new terminals they're selling today have NFC built in. Same thing for Hypercom and Ingenico and all of these guys. And you'll see this with some of the larger terminals. So like MX 915 or 925, so these are the big sleek black ones, all the way down to like the FD100. They have the FD35 pin pad, which has both a chip slot and the NFC payments. So if you're upgrading your terminal, essentially just make sure it has NFC capability. And the big reason is this. Mobile payments, I think a lot of people think it just means you're going to pay with just the phone. But when you look at the adoption of the phone, it's a very different way of paying, right? Because you'll have your wallet in one pocket, you'll have your phone in the other pocket, maybe you're texting somebody while you're trying to pay. So, for a lot of people, paying with the phone, it's not a natural thing because they've spent so many years paying with a card. And in the same way, like a fitness tracker, right? Your phone can do fitness tracking, but you still go and you buy a fitness tracker because it's a purpose-built thing. So a lot of times when you want to pay, you want the convenience of paying with a device that's maybe already on your wrist, like a smartwatch or a fitness tracker. Right. And so, the goal really is to make sure that you can pay with that device without impacting what the retailer does.
Right. Nathan, do you have a question?
Yeah. I'm curious. Did you find a certain amount of difficulty working with the banks, working with MasterCard, were they not necessarily inviting you to jump in and actually create something, or did you find that they were actually wanting more people like you and your team?
They absolutely want more people because they're really interested in reducing friction for payments as well, right? I mean, they have a vested interest in securing things and in reducing fraud, but they don't want it to become to the point where it's so hard to make a payment that they reduce fraud by eliminating payments. Right? The goal to reduce fraud is to do it through technology. And for them, in order to get people using wearables, it essentially needs to be sort of a default feature. So today, when you buy wearables, they all have a step counter, mm-hmm. right? The goal for companies like MasterCard is when you buy a wearable, you can pay with it. Mm-hmm. The idea being that it essentially, that's how you change behavior. That's how you get people using these kinds of devices. And so it was actually great working with them because they all want to make sure that this is frictionless. And so when you look at rules and regulations around credit cards, when you apply those directly to a wearable, it doesn't necessarily make sense. And so we've been working with them to make sure that a wearable device that can pay is user-friendly, that it can last for more than 12 hours on a charge, for example. You want it to last for several days, that it can run on a lightweight system. And they've been very receptive to it because, they themselves are pushing this kind of a payment system. They want to see more and more adoption. And so, for them, it doesn't make sense to get in the way of themselves, and they really aren't. They're they're great partners to work with.
That's fantastic.
Great.
You have to go through a certification process, actually go to their, I guess, branch or something like this and sign off on a contract and give your thumbprint and things like that. How did you?
Yeah, essentially, and this is actually one of the reasons why we're partnering with these guys to bring payments to all wearables, because the process is quite complex, right? I mean, first you have to build your entire backend system. So maybe I'll step back for a second and kind of talk about how the payment flow works. So we're doing essentially tokenized NFC transactions. So these are single-use tokens. So the idea is that on your device you have a set of codes or keys that represent your account, but they aren't actually your account number. So when you tap the device, you hand over the token. The token goes to MasterCard or to Visa or to Amex, and they associate the token with your account, and then they charge your account. But you're never actually handing your account number over to the merchant. Your account number is never going over the network. It's just this single-use token. So once a token has been used, it expires. But there's this whole infrastructure required to take the token from the bank, put it onto the device, and make sure that happens securely, store the token securely on the device, do the communication with the terminal, and then get the token back from the device all the way back to the bank. And so in order to build that system, of course, there's a lot of working directly with these networks engineering teams. So our engineers work with their engineers, make sure the systems talk together. We work with their security teams to make sure that our systems are secure, but they're also usable, right? Because the most secure system is one where you have to take the wearable out of a vault and then use your thumbprint and an eye print and go to the store, buy your water, and then go return this wearable to a vault. We don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So how do you make a system where, for the user, it's seamless, but it's still secure? But the thing is, most companies who build these devices, they don't want to go through that same process. So what's really exciting is by making this single platform that any wearable, they can get essentially a hardware reference design from us. They get the firmware from us. And when they use those two, they get the certifications that we've gone through. And that really helps speed up the adoption. So instead of taking a year or 2 years and millions of dollars to bring payments into your device, it's a matter of weeks or months. We'll add payments. Okay, we'll add payments, and it's done. And I think this is necessary to actually change how this happens, because if it's a process where every maker has to go through this years-long process, very few people will be able to pay with their devices. It'll just be the big players. And that means that standard cards will be there for a long time, and the convenience of a wearable doesn't really impact the merchant so much.
Okay. So that's a really good question. It brings up a question for me in that, so is Coin actually building its own standard where, there's going to be an API that other payment providers can just access and connect to, use, become a part of your ecosystem?
Yeah, so we're not really creating a standard per se, because we're using the existing technologies that networks have built out. But what we are providing is a standardized way of connecting to those networks. So I'm sure most of you have talked with or heard of Stripe, right? So Stripe essentially does what we do on the opposite side. So Stripe makes it easy for a merchant to accept credit cards. We make it easy for a device maker to act as a credit card or act as a account, right? So now if you're a merchant and you sign up with Stripe, it's very, very quick, very easy. And we want to do the exact same thing for someone who's building a device that lets you pay. It's, your core competency as a manufacturer of a device is not payment. Your core competency is fitness tracking or coaching or making jewelry that looks great. You want it to pay so that if someone goes for a run, they don't have to carry their phone in their wallet. They just have their keys and their tracker. But yeah, we're building the standardized system to make that process very seamless and easy.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So actually you mentioned e-commerce, for example. So how would is a coin card, how would somebody use it to run e-commerce? Is that possible, or is it just for in-store? So
right now we're focusing just on in-store, right? I mean, we're trying to build out this payment infrastructure for real world, because when you look at commerce, retailers like Amazon and these, e-commerce is very big, but most commerce happens physically, right? Right? You go to a restaurant and you eat. You don't eat online. You eat in person. Maybe you order the food online, but it's still a physical restaurant.
Not yet.
Not yet. Right? Yeah, maybe we'll 3D print our food one day. But most people still go to the grocery store and get their groceries. They still fill up their gas in person. I mean, these are very physical things, and so we want to bring new technology, not just online, but focus on the offline world, because that's where most of the dollars are spent in person.
Okay, so what about solutions like mobile handheld, like payment solutions that retailers can get, like Square, and I mean those are actually, they have the Stripe option,
right?
But there are ones that don't even have hardware. You just have a mobile device. You can enter your payment information right in the store. Mm-hmm. So then, how would that work? If they have NFC on the mobile device, it would be the same?
Yeah, exactly. So even like Square, for example, they have new terminals that accept NFC and chip because of the EMV shift, right? And so I think that's one of the most interesting things is because of this new hardware, because of the rule change, it's actually allowing a lot of this progress in technology.
Okay.
When you look at a country like Sweden that's been fast to adopt to credit cards and now fast to adopt things like NFC, does this give you more hope that the rest of the world is going to follow the same sort of pattern, where it's almost like a cashless society? And
yeah, I think so. I think that you'll definitely see different behaviors in different countries, right? So if you look at China, for example, a lot of it is based on QR codes. So they have WeChat, and you pay on your phone, but it's not NFC based, it's a barcode. But a lot of other countries are, like Sweden, but especially like in the US, because of the rule change, are forcing over. But I think you'll see some stores will always prefer cash, but I'm seeing more and more places now that prefer credit card. Can you please use your card? Where 5 years ago it might have been, can you please use cash? And I think that's accelerating now because people are really seeing that the more frictionless the experience, it's a matter of maybe I'll just swing by and get the small snack. It's not a big deal, just tap and go, and you almost get addicted to that little behavior.
Mm-hmm. When Darius, you have a question?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So where risks are involved, I know that there's insurance companies that take place, and people have to have some type of plan B. Is there some type of a plan B that you have to build into your system for fraudulent activity and things like that?
Yeah. So the security that we have is really because it's because we are using the EMV standard, and because we're using single-use tokens. So what this means is, let's say that you lose your wearable. The whole basis of our security first is based on the fact that you have a cardholder verification and you have essentially a device verification. So first step is adding your credentials to the device, right? So when you do that, you go through the standard, same process as Apple Pay, right? So they make sure that you actually own that card. So if I take your card, I can't really add that to my device unless I know some specific things about your account, which means either I have your account password or I know your first car and your and all those questions.
Mother's maiden name and things like that.
Exactly. So that's sort of the first line of defense. The second line of defense is actually when you're wearing the device. There's this concept of essentially verifying that you are the right owner of the thing. So if I take your wearable, it actually won't work for payments because one of the things we do is a Bluetooth handshake. So when you put the device on, we make sure that you are your owner, that you've pinned into your phone, that you've verified that you are the owner of this wearable device, and that authorization lasts as long as the device is on your wrist. If you pull the wrist thing off, you put it back on, we look for that ping again. And the last big thing is that as part of the NFC standard, as part of the EMV standard, there's a whole cryptogram that happens, right? So that in itself makes it a very secure transaction because everything is encrypted when it gets sent from the wearable to the terminal. And because they're one-time use tokens, even if there is a breach, you expire the tokens, you get new ones. If you lose your device, you can say, I lost this device, and those tokens immediately become useless. So that in itself helps fight fraud, whereas with a static account number like on a credit card, if someone skims your card, you don't know until you see the charges on your statement.
Got it. Okay.
So in the case of the wearable, how would it actually work? Do I still need to have the card in my pocket? But so how does it actually work in the case of a wearable?
So in the case of wearable, the first step is actually setting the card up in your app. So part of what we provide is an SDK for the wearable maker. So in their app, you'd go through and add the credit card to your account. So you take a picture of the front and the back, you add the account number, you go through the questions. And at that point, we talk to the MasterCard server, for example, and we get the credentials from the server to the phone and pass them on to the wearable. And at that point, you carry your phone with you still, because most people do, but to pay, you don't have to carry the card itself with you.
Okay.
You just load up that particular card onto the wearable from the app, and then you can tap to pay as you normally would.
Okay, so in that case, you don't really need the card with you anymore.
That's correct.
Okay, so you do need the card if you don't have a wearable. And which wearables are you looking at? Is it launched, or are you just working on getting the first ones on?
Yeah, so we're working with the first ones right now. So the few companies that we've announced with MasterCard is a watchmaker, Omate. There's a workout coach called Atlas, and a fitness tracker called Move. And these are all companies that are very into like active lifestyle, for example, right? So you might take Atlas when you go to the gym. You might take Move when you go for a run, and you don't want to carry around a bunch of stuff with you. So if you are at the gym and you want to just buy a Gatorade from the vending machine, this is a very quick and easy way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fact that if somebody was to, for example, steal a wearable, they would have to also take the phone with them.
That's correct.
But what about the card? What if somebody steals the card, like your wallet?
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, it's a standard thing you have to do today, right? Where you call the issuer, because they can still swipe your card. They can still insert the card into a replacement sign, because it's chip and signature, not chip and pin.
Okay.
So that protection is still based on the card security. But what we're focusing on is the security of the wearable itself, with the idea that you actually wouldn't be carrying the card around. It would be at a safe place at home.
Right. I think that's definitely going in the right direction. So
I have a question in regards to that. I've seen situations where people will get their information loaded up into, let's say, their Apple Watch or their iPhone, and then they lose it. And then it's a matter of or something happens with their device, can't connect, and then how do we unpair them in a way that it doesn't ruin some of the things that have been set up? Is this just another complication, or is there a simple answer to things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, in the case of something like an Apple Watch, for example, right? If you take the watch off and you try to pay, it actually won't let you. You have to pin in, and even if you pin in, you have to be wearing the device. So there's that security where even if you lose the device, it doesn't really matter, because it itself is protected. Whereas on a credit card, everything is exposed. So that's really the biggest security advantage. Is it's not only more secure, but the user actually can care less about the security. They have to worry less about it because the system itself protects it. If you lose your phone, for example, the few things you can do, for example, with Apple and Android, you can remote wipe the phone, right? So you log into iCloud, you log into Android, into your account, and you can go and deactivate the phone. You can wipe it so that it doesn't matter that somebody else has it. There's no data on it to lose.
Got it. Wow. So impressive how
Yeah, it's actually great, because I think it's ultimately going to help all of us have a simpler life, not all these 20 or 5 or 10 different credit cards you have to worry about. What about, so I was taking a look at some of the information on the website, and I saw this interesting thing called dipped payment. What is the dipped payment? I've heard of like swiped and tap. Mm-hmm. What is dipped?
So dip payment is the chip style, right?
Okay, so that
Yeah.
you have to do it, put it in, and then
You
wait
put it in.
until it's done. That's called
Exactly.
dipped. Okay,
That's
okay.
called it. Yeah.
All right, I was
Yeah.
wondering. Great. And then one more thing is I heard about coin rewards.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's actually one of the big reasons that we're building this platform for wearables. Traditionally, when you're a merchant and you want to bring in people to your store, right? You'll take out advertisements, you'll send coupons, you'll do all these things to try and get customers. But it's very difficult because you're sort of blindly saying, "Hey, do you want coffee?" And maybe they're not a coffee drinker.
Sure.
Do you want to go see a movie? Maybe they don't see movies, and you kind of have to go and target a lot of people, and it's very inefficient. Whereas when you think about online marketing, you can target people in specific age ranges. You can specifically target people who are searching for something. So when you're searching for a dishwasher, you see ads for dishwashers, as opposed to seeing an ad in the mail for a dishwasher when you don't need one.
Got it.
So what Coin Rewards does is it makes this process a lot more seamless. It allows us to surface offers to people when they're in the act of paying. It allows us to surface offers to people who have been to specific types of stores or who like to shop specific places. So we have an offer right now for Pete's Coffee, for example. So we can look at people who use Coin and are in the vicinity of Pete's, as an example. And this means that when they see an offer, it's relevant to them because they're close to the store that's offering the reward. They're maybe likely to use the offer, which means that when a merchant is deciding how much to budget for their ads, they know that every dollar is going to reach someone who actually might convert, as opposed to sort of praying that some percentage of the users will convert. And so the way the Coin Rewards works is actually very simple for the user and for the merchant. You go into the app and you say, yes, I want this reward. And you select a credit card that you want associated with it. So if you have a Visa loaded up, you say, I want this Visa card to be associated. So for the pizza offer, for example, let's say you have 3 Visa cards in your Coin account. You say, I want my Chase Visa, my United Airlines Chase Visa to be associated with the offer. You go to Pete's, you use your Chase Visa, and that's it. The backend takes care of realizing that you signed up for the offer. It takes care of sending you the reward. The merchant doesn't have to do anything beyond signing up for the offer. Their salespeople don't have to be trained on it. There's no coupons to keep track of. Everything is seamless and in the background.
Okay.
And the reward is instant. So they immediately get a push notification saying, you've been credited $10. Here's your Amazon gift certificate. It's instant. So it's it's not like a mail-in certificate where 3 weeks later it comes.
Right.
You get that rush of, oh, I got a reward right away.
And you forget about most of them anyway.
Yeah,
So-
and in this case, because it's for things that you do always, it's not convincing you to do something that you normally wouldn't do, right? If you never leave the house, you wouldn't see an offer for coffee. But if you get coffee a lot, why don't you try pizza out?
Right, right.
This is really the reason for most of the advertising, is to get the customer in the door the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So the advertising is signed up with Coin? So a retailer would sign up with Coin? Or
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so you actually have a group or a way that retailers can go on the website and
Yeah.
sign up. Is this launched already, or is it?
So we've launched with a few select large partners right now.
Okay.
And we're basically building out the infrastructure today to expand this to pretty much any merchant that wants to be on the system.
Okay, and is it going to be basically a part of that? How is it going to charge the merchant? How do they get charged?
So the merchant essentially gets to decide, what is the bounty, if you will, right? So what is the offer to the customer? What is the offer to that's essentially up to the merchant to decide.
Got it. So we've talked about rewards, we've talked about mobile payments, but what about something like gift cards, that's somewhere in between? How does that? Do you do any sort of? Is there any sort of work in that area?
We've thought about gift cards for a long time, and it's one of those things where it makes a lot of sense for that to become digital as well. And I think, right now when you go buy gift cards, they're all magstripe based. But I think in the near future, we're starting to see, certain places certainly have NFC based gift cards. Panera, for example, is starting to roll those out. And that'll actually make things very simple, because now instead of having a stack of 50 gift cards, everything gets consolidated into one MasterCard for one store and another card for another store, and it just makes that process more seamless. And this ties into Coin Rewards because you instantly get a card that you can use at a store as opposed to something online.
Yeah, what would be awesome is there was a place where, as a consumer, I would have all my gift cards, all my reward cards, all my credit cards, all my these store loyalty cards. I mean, all these things that are all like I have a credit at Lowe's, and I can't even find the card.
Right.
So,
yeah, and that's the biggest thing, right? Is with physical cards, you have to remember to carry everything around, and for banks especially, they want you to use their card, and when you leave it out of your wallet, suddenly they've lost because the chance that you're going to put it back in your wallet is very slim, and digital payments is really good for them because now all the cards are there on the device, and whether you have one card or 8 cards or 10 cards, you're not carrying more around. So this makes it easier for them to incentivize the customer to use their card, and it's actually customer friendly because now the banks have to compete even harder to convince you to use that card.
Right. Okay, great. Well, I think we've come up on the time. You have one more question?
I have one more question. Where do you see Bitcoin going? Yeah, I know this. I don't know. It's kind of outside of our realm of questions, but I'm very curious.
I think Bitcoin. I think it has use for certain types of transactions. It has. I think the blockchain technology itself is probably what's going to survive and stay in the realm of traditional transactions. I think banks will start to adopt it because of the security model that it allows. I think Bitcoin itself as a currency will probably stay as a niche thing for years to come, just because there's so much infrastructure and people use the traditional currency day to day, and it's very hard to make even a small change in the payment systems because people's livelihoods depend on it, right? So saying that we're going to shift our entire currency to something virtual becomes very difficult. But on the back end, I think that the Bitcoin technology, especially blockchain, is probably what you'll see powering most things in the next 5-10 years.
Okay, great question. So just to recap, as far as the retailers are concerned, all they have to do is make sure they get a POS terminal which is NFC enabled.
Correct.
And the good thing about that is that even if NFC changes, that terminal will probably get updated with it, so they don't have to worry about it. And then everything else is going to be handled by Coin, MasterCard, the credit card companies in the back end. Mm-hmm. They don't have to worry about it. So as far as the store is concerned, so that's good. And then when the rewards is available, they can actually go and find out how they can actually, optimize a customer's visit mm-hmm. in or near their store.
Yep.
In offering more things to them. Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Karthik. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully we'll hear more and more awesome news from Coin. So,
great. Well, thank you for having me. This was great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tony.
Right.
Hey. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.